One of the most talked about pieces of gear in the guitar world has to be the Dumble amplifier. Anyone who knows about Dumble amps will know the sheer insanity of the prices of these things, which simply makes them unobtainable to most of us mere mortals. Most guitar players will never ever have the experience to own one, maybe not even to play one, and some of us won't even get the experience of hearing one, because these things are so rare and, you know, they're just not out there. They're not available for us, and for most of us, we don't even have a chance of competing in the price range that these things live in. But that's where the pedal in today's video comes in. In this video, we're going to be checking out a pedal that is based on a real Dumble amp and built by someone who knows these things inside and out. In this video, we're going to be checking out the Overdriveland by Free the Tone. So the Overdriveland is an overdrive pedal that aims to capture that magical quality of a Dumble Overdrive Special. Now, there are many pedals on the market that claim to do the Dumble thing, but this is actually based on a real Dumble that is owned by the founder and designer of Free the Tone. He's actually been working on Dumble amps for over 20 years and he has a couple of them in his personal collection. So he, as a builder, is someone who really understands how these things work and what they do to your guitar playing. So he's taken everything he knows about Dumble amps and distilled that into a pedal which aims to capture that magic. So in this video, we're going to find out if this thing can sound like a guitar amp that is worth six figures on the resale market. Big thanks to Free the Tone for sending me over this pedal to check out for this video. If you want to find out more about this pedal, there is a link down below in the description where you can do that. And there's actually a really cool story in that link about the development of this pedal. Some of those things I'm going to talk about in this video, but if you want to find out the full details and the full backstory on how this thing was made and everything that went into that, that link is definitely worth checking out because there's some super interesting stuff over there to be found. So spec-wise, this pedal is actually very interesting in how it works because most two-sided overdrive pedals or overdrive pedals with two channels typically work by having one side that is your core sound and then you add another side on top to stack the gain that way. But the way this works is a little bit more like an amplifier. So when the pedal is on its regular side, which is called the normal channel, you basically have the sound of the pedal. But then what we have is a drive circuit which sits before that. So it's kind of like running an overdrive into the front of an amp. So you get your sound with the normal channel and then you push it over the edge with the drive channel. Rather than adding drive on top of your existing sound, you're actually adding it before, which is a different approach than what I've seen typically in an overdrive pedal, but it really does give you that more amp-like characteristic. It's very, very interesting. The pedal itself looks quite complicated because there's a lot going on. But when we break this down, it's actually not as complex as it seems. There's two foot switches. We've got the on and off switch here that turns the pedal on and off, and the foot switch here which cycles between normal and drive mode. Here we have 5 main control knobs across the top. So the first one is the normal channel volume. So when you're in the normal mode, this is the volume for that channel. Tone control, and a gain control. Those are the main three things you're going to be using to set your core tone. So when you're dialing in your tone on the normal channel, that's where you're going to be doing most of the work. Then we have a push control and a drive control. Now these are actually for the drive channel, and we'll get onto those in a minute because they're very interesting. Down here we have the drive volume. So this is the output volume for the drive channel. You can either volume match them so you just get more drive, or you can use that as a boost. Then we have two little toggle switches. The first one is turning the EQ on or putting it into glass mode, which bypasses the tone stack, and it gives you this real glassy, bright sound, kind of like the bright switch on a Fender Vibroverb. And then we have the rock and jazz mode. This gives you some different gain characteristics. So in the rock mode, it's a slightly higher gain, slightly brighter sound. And in the jazz mode, there's a little bit less gain and the low end is a little bit more rounded. So the rock thing is great if you don't want to have too much low end. The jazz setting is great if you want to really fill out that low end. Great with single coils. And then the final thing we have over here is a high cut for the drive channel. This is really useful for shaving off any unwanted harshness in the top end that you might get. And then on the back of the pedal, we've got this little switch here, which is very cool. This is a power rating switch, which goes between standard 9-volt mode and an internal power supply. The internal power supply actually changes the voltage to 14.5 volts, which changes the feel and tone of this. So when you're in that higher power rating, you get a little bit more headroom and it's a little bit more open sounding. And then in the standard 9-volt, you can get a bit more kind of compressed and spongy. Kind of like a real amp. When you adjust the voltages, the amp will react different. That's exactly what they've gone for in this pedal. So I mentioned that the Overdriveland works a little bit different to a standard overdrive pedal in the way that the gain staging happens. So when you're using this pedal, you're going to use the normal channel, these controls here, and your toggle switches to set your tone up. So once you've got the tone you're happy with, either a low gain tone up to a crunch tone, that's your sound, that's your normal channel. The drive circuit sits before this. So what we're doing here is we're hitting the front end of this with the additional drive. So the first control here, the drive control, this is the amount of gain for the drive channel. And then we have the push control. Now this is really cool because what the push control does is the higher we set this, the more it pushes the drive channel into the normal channel. So we can choose to dial this back and only push a little bit of the drive circuit in, or we can turn it up and push a lot of it in. So again, like running a pedal in the front of a real valve amp, you can get different push levels and different amounts of compression, clipping, boost, anything you want. It's a really cool way of doing it because you actually have control of how much of the drive channel hits the normal channel. And this is really cool because you can set so many different variables. You can have a high gain drive pushing into a low gain normal. You can have a high gain normal with a low gain drive pushing into it, which will yield a completely different result. Or you can go crazy and have both the drives up full, stack them that way. You know, the options are pretty much unlimited. And that push control allows you to adjust how much you're pushing as well. And that's really cool because you can be quite subtle with it, or you can be pretty crazy with it and unlock a bunch of really cool things. So yeah, that's kind of it spec-wise. Now I'm gonna plug this thing in and we're gonna hear some sounds. So gear-wise in this video, I'm gonna be using my B&G Guitars little sister. This is plugged into the Blackstar TV10A. That's running completely clean, and the amp is going via the 2-Notes Torpedo Captor X. So first of all, here's the clean tone that I'm gonna be running the pedal into. So we're going to start with the normal channel. I've got the tone and gain controls straight up at 12 o'clock, and I've got the level at about 10 o'clock. This is a little above unity gain, so it's giving a little lift to the volume. I do think when you push the amp slightly harder with this, it does really bring this alive. So here's the normal channel as it is. So even just at that point, it's a really interesting tone because it's very thick, it's very chewy, but there's still a lot of bite to it, especially when you're playing on the higher strings. So that's great for bluesy stuff, but then it does have that really nice fat low end. Now we can adjust this more with these controls, the glass and the rock and jazz switch, and also the tone control. So the tone control on this is incredibly wide ranging. So it can go from pretty dark to pretty bright when we crank it. So it's a pretty wide-ranging tone control, and we can also use these two toggle switches here to adjust that further. So if I turn the glass on, what this is doing is bypassing the tone stack and giving you like a brighter sound, kind of like the bright switch on a vibroverb. Then we've also got the rock and jazz switch. So in the rock mode, it's what you've already heard. It's a little bit brighter with a bit less low end. In the jazz setting, it's going to dial the gain back a bit and round out those lows. So it's quite subtle, but that will make a big difference to your tone as you're going down your tone shaping journey. Because again, depending on what guitar you use, one of those settings may work great with humbuckers, the other one may work great with single coils. I'm using P90, so it's kind of a neutral middle ground there. But if you're using something like a humbucker or a single coil, you'll probably get a bit more variation from that switch as well. So a lot of tone shaping options there. So I'm just going to play a little bit now, and I'm just going to move all of those different controls. So I'm going to move the gain control from low to high. I'm going to play with the tone control, and I'm going to turn these two things on and off as we go. So again, it's super wide ranging. You can get some quite aggressive sounds out of that. With the gain up high, it's pretty nasty sounding. but in a kind of a cool bluesy way. And then some of those lower gain sounds, I guess, are some of the things that we really associate with a Dumble amp, like that harmonically rich, fat single note thing. And it's cool because everything kind of feels like it's always on the edge of breakup. So it's a very dynamic pedal, which again is something I've not really seen from other overdrive pedals, is the absolute range of dynamics you can actually get from this. Because if you dig in, it breaks up. But then as soon as you play softer, it's a much cleaner sound. And that also is true when you're playing with a higher gain setting like this. So just backing off your guitar's volume makes a huge difference. So yeah, a lot of really cool tones there. I'm a big fan of this with the EQ on and in the rock setting. My preferred settings for this channel would probably be somewhere around here. This is where I tend to play with this a lot. That's where I really like that channel, because there's enough gain there for when you dig in, but it's quite nice and bluesy. It works really nice on the neck pickup as well when you're playing high up the neck. To me, it's got that really nice kind of chewy kind of 60s British blues thing when you play up the neck, which I'm a big fan of anyway. Then we can talk about the drive channel. So I'm just going to start by setting the push and the drive to midnight, and I'm going to turn the high cut off. So this is going to be the exact same sound you just heard. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit that with the drive. So turn this on, we're going to boost that channel with the drive circuit. So the first thing you notice there is that's a little bit quieter. So I'm just going to bring that drive volume up now to try and match where we are. So now we've got the start of our higher gain sound. Now, this is the way that I always have this pedal set up. So for me, that's literally my favorite sound from this, because that's the sound that I always use. But we can once again tweak this further. So we've got the push control, which pushes this drive circuit into that normal channel more. We've got the drive control, which obviously adds more gain. And then we've got the high cut, which shaves off all that top end that we might not want. Everything else is still functional. So we can still use the tone control, the EQ switches and the rock and jazz switch, but they're actually still affecting the normal channel. So we're basically adjusting the normal channel in real time while also hitting it with an additional gain stage as well, which is really cool because we kind of have access to both sides of the pedal at all times, which is really fun. So first of all, I'm just going to show you the high cut and show you how that works. So you've heard it there with that completely off. Now, what you can find is when you play at a louder volume, especially gig volume, when you're hitting the front of it with a higher gain sound, can be quite harsh in the top end, depending on what guitar you're using, especially if you're using single coils. So you can use this to dial out some of that high end. So you can hear that's pretty wide ranging as well. That's a very useful thing, especially if you're using single coils, you can really tame that sound. So I'm just going to leave a little high cut on. So with that, I now have two different sounds with the same pedal. I've got my normal and my drive. Now we're going to talk about the push control and the drive control. Now we kind of have to talk about both these at the same time because they're very interactive. Everything here works together. So at the moment the push is just on halfway. If I want to push less of my drive control in, I'm just going to bring the push back. So we're not adding much drive there because we're not really pushing it that hard, but we can also do the opposite and we can push more. And this is where the feel of the pedal changes, because now it feels a bit more kind of chewier and spongier because I'm pushing in harder. So this is where you get some of those real pushed amp tones. But it's also still super dynamic if I roll back. So the push control gives us a load of different options. So right now I'm pushing it pretty hard, but what I could do is I could just push like a lower gain sound into my normal channel. Or if I want to go crazy, push a high gain sound in. And that is quite a lot of gain, you know, for the typical sound you'd expect from a Dumble, that's quite high gain. We can obviously boost the gain here as well, and we can have, you know, max push and max gain. And you get those nice overtones as well. So it does have a lot of gain on tap, and it kind of verges on fuzz when you get to that point. Again, probably not the intended sound from this, but it is a cool sound nonetheless. I really like the way that the two gain stages interact with each other and create those real amp-like overtones. That to me really does sound like an amp, especially in the room that I'm hearing it. It's got those characteristics that you'd expect from a loud amp. Now, as I said, you can blend these things to your own taste. There's so many options. We can have low gain into low gain with a big push like this. Or we could have low gain into high gain, like so. We could have high gain into low gain, like so. And yeah, you name it. You can also then obviously adjust the push, so I can have high gain into low gain with less of a push. What you can hear there is you can hear a nice blend of the two, because you can still get that clean signal coming through from the normal channel, but the overtones from the high gain sound. And the more we push it, the more that high gain sound and more overtones comes through. You can have less of a push. Obviously that gets a lot quieter, and there's a lot of balancing to be done within this pedal because the two sides are so interactive that it's not really the sort of thing you can just set and forget. You do have to think about how you use this thing and dial in both the sounds to be very complementary to each other, and it's going to react different with different guitars, different amps. There's a ton of cool things you can do with this. And the final thing left to talk about is the internal PSU switch on the back of the unit. So you've heard everything so far in 9-volt mode. I'm going to play a bit now on both channels and switch between the two modes. So I'm going to start with the normal channel, then I'm going to switch up to 14.5 volts, then I'm going to go to the drive channel and do the same thing. So there you go, there is the Overdriveland by Free the Tone. This is a really fun pedal and it has so many cool sounds in there. I've never tried a real Dumble amp, so obviously I can't vouch for the authenticity of the sounds. I don't know if it sounds exactly like a Dumble. For all I know, it could sound nothing like a Dumble whatsoever. But it does sound good and it's a really fun pedal. There's a lot of cool sounds in there. What I really like about this is the fact that it makes you think a little bit about dialing in your tone. Because as guitar players, there are so many pedals that we all know and love that, you know, are just plug and play, turn it on, and it sounds great. And sometimes I think we take that for granted. And having a pedal that has so many interactive parts and so many moving components that affect everything else in the signal chain is something really interesting. And it definitely makes me think more about the tones I'm using. And I really like it. You know, like I said, it took me a while to figure it out because when I first got it, it didn't instantly grab me. And I'm quite comfortable in saying that because I eventually found what I liked about this pedal. And I think if you're going to get one of these, I would recommend doing the same. Spend some time with it. I spent a couple of days playing with it. I tried it at home. I tried it at a couple of sound checks so I could hear it at stage volume. And then what I did was I put it away and I didn't touch it for a couple of weeks. Then I plugged it back in because that gave me time to kind of process that and really figure out what I like from it. And now I love it because I took that time and I figured out what is this pedal for me. And I guess that's kind of the ethos of what a Dumble amp is. Alexander Dumble would build amps for the player. He didn't build amps that were just the same for everyone. And I think that's very important to remember with this. You've got to figure out your own thing with this and make that work for you. So yeah, it's a really cool pedal. I love it. Let me know what you guys think of the sound down below in the comments. Like I said earlier on, there's a link in the description where you can check out more about this pedal. There's a ton of cool information on how this was built. And there's also a custom shop version out there with a couple of extra cool features as well. So please go check that out. A big thanks once again to the guys at Free the Tone for sending me this pedal to check out. I love it and I'm having a lot of fun dialing this thing in and getting my own taste of the Dumble thing. Let me know what you guys think down below. I'll see you very soon. Thanks so much for watching.